In a small children's home, security cameras captured something unusual every night. A janitor named Samuel, after his shift, would sit by a blind girl's bed and read to her. He didn't know the woman watching those feeds was the girl's grandmother, a publishing billionaire. And she was searching for something money couldn't buy, proof of genuine love. Samuel was a single father working nights as a janitor at the Willowbrook Children's Home. The girl was 7-year-old Lily, blind since birth, who had no other visitors. Every night, Samuel gave her what the system could not, undivided attention. But this simple act of kindness was being scrutinized by the one person with the power to change their lives forever, setting up a collision between a humble heart and a billion-dollar legacy. Understand why a billionaire would secretly watch security feeds. You need to understand the system. Willowbrook was a state-funded children's home, one of thousands where an estimated 80% of children have at least one living parent. Lily's mother, the billionaire's daughter, had struggled with addiction and lost custody before passing away. The grandmother, Elena Vance, had been estranged for years, her vast fortune built on publishing empires like Vance Press and Storyscape Media. But grief and guilt had driven her to quietly monitor the granddaughter. She felt she'd failed. Samuel's story began with his own loss. His wife, Clara, had died in a car accident 4 years earlier, leaving him to raise their daughter, Mia, alone. He worked the night janitorial shift at Willowbrook not just for the paycheck, but because the quiet halls after hours gave him space to grieve. One evening, he heard crying from a room at the end of the corridor, room 7, Lily's room. The night staff was stretched thin, one caregiver for 15 children. Samuel peeked in and found Lily sitting up in bed, her small hands gripping the sheets, tears wetting the dark lenses of her sunglasses. He didn't know what to do, he wasn't trained, but he remembered what worked with Mia. He asked softly, "Would you like a story?" Lily didn't answer, just turned her head toward his voice. Samuel pulled a worn picture book from the communal shelf, The Velveteen Rabbit. He began to read, awkwardly at first. Then he remembered the voices Clara used to do. For the rabbit, a timid, whispery voice. For the old skin horse, a gruff, kind rumble. He tapped the bed frame for hoofbeats, rustled his uniform for the sound of magic fairy wings. Lily stopped crying. A small smile appeared. When he finished, she whispered, "Again, please." That was the beginning. It became a ritual. After mopping floors and emptying trash, Samuel would wash his hands, grab a book, and sit in the small chair by Lily's bed. He learned she loved stories with rich soundscapes, ocean waves, forest winds, city rain. He learned to describe the pictures in vivid detail since she couldn't see them. "The dragon isn't just red," he'd say. "He's the color of the hottest part of a fire, with scales that look like polished coins, and his wings sound like a sail snapping in a storm." Meanwhile, in a Manhattan penthouse 200 miles away, Elena Vance watched. She had paid a substantial, discreet fee to the home's security contractor for real-time access to the camera in Lily's hallway. Initially, it was a torturous compulsion, watching the granddaughter she'd never met, the child of the daughter she'd fought with and lost. She saw the rotating staff, the hurried bedtime routines. She saw Lily's loneliness, a quiet child in a system not built for the blind. Then she saw the janitor. At first, Elena dismissed him, another underpaid worker. But night after night, she watched him return. She saw him not just read, but perform. She saw him patiently answer Lily's questions about how things felt, how they sounded. She watched Lily's face transform from blank resignation to eager anticipation, her hands reaching toward the sound of his voice, as if trying to touch the story itself. Elena was a woman who dealt in narratives. She knew the power of a story, but this was different. This wasn't a product to sell. This was uncompensated, unnoticed kindness, and it stirred something long buried, a memory of reading to her own daughter before wealth and pressure drove them apart. Samuel knew none of this. His world was the grind of single parenthood. His day was a marathon, getting Mia to school, working a day job stocking shelves, catching a few hours of sleep, then his night shift at Willowbrook. The reading sessions with Lily became his solace too. In making stories come alive for her, he felt closer to the father he wanted to be, the man he was before grief hollowed him out. The system, however, was not designed for solace. Willowbrook operated on razor-thin margins. The staff, though caring, were overwhelmed. A recent report cited that children with disabilities like visual impairment were significantly less likely to achieve family reunification or adoption. Lily was classified as a complex placement. Volunteers were rare, and consistent, dedicated attention was a luxury the home couldn't provide. Samuel's nightly visits were technically against protocol, a non-staff member alone with a child, but the night supervisor, a weary woman named Gail, looked the other way. She saw the good it did. Elena's surveillance intensified. She had her assistant compile a background report on Samuel. It was sparse, no criminal record, a former construction worker, widowed, clean financials, but deeply in debt from his wife's medical bills. He lived in a modest apartment with his daughter. To her corporate mind, he was a negligible variable. To her grandmother's heart, he was becoming the solution to a painful equation. The tension built invisibly. Samuel began bringing books from home, stories he thought Lily would love. He used different accents, crafted simple sound effect toys, a rainstick made from a cardboard tube and rice. Lily began to talk more, to ask about the world outside her room. "What does emerald sound like?" she asked one night. Samuel thought for a moment, then hummed a low, clear, vibrating note. "Like that," he said. Lily beamed. Elena watched this and made a decision. She could no longer be a ghost in the machine. She needed to know if this man's kindness was genuine or performative. Was he safe? Was he good? Her fortune, her influence, it all meant nothing if she couldn't ensure Lily's happiness. But direct contact was risky. What if he recognized her? What if he wanted something? She devised a test. One Tuesday night, Samuel arrived to find Lily distraught. A new, overworked aide had hurriedly put her to bed, forgetting her favorite stuffed elephant. Lily was crying quietly, a hopeless sound. Samuel spent 20 minutes searching until he found it under a laundry cart. He returned, placed the elephant in her arms, and did not read from a book. Instead, he made up a story about a brave little elephant who got lost, but found its way home by listening to the heartbeats of its friends. He tapped a slow, steady rhythm on his chest. Lily placed her small hand over his, feeling the beat, and calmed. In her penthouse, Elena Vance, a woman who commanded boardrooms, wept silently. She had seen executives cry over billion-dollar deals gone wrong, but never over a found toy elephant. This was not a performance. This was love in action. The next morning, Elena picked up her private line. She called the director of Willowbrook Children's Home. Her voice, usually so measured, held a new urgency. "This is Elena Vance. I am Lily's maternal grandmother. We need to talk. And there is a man who works there, a janitor named Samuel. I want him present for the meeting." On the other end of the line, the director sat in stunned silence. The reclusive billionaire was not just acknowledging her granddaughter, she was asking for a janitor to be in the room. Samuel, meanwhile, was asleep after his shift, unaware that his small world of late-night stories and clean floors was about to collide with a power he could never have imagined. The call had been made, the wheels were in motion, and the simple, hidden act of reading to a blind child was poised to unravel a legacy and rewrite two lonely lives forever. The call from the director's office came as Samuel was frying eggs for his daughter Mia's breakfast. His first chilling thought, he was being fired, protocol breached. He arrived at Willowbrook in his best shirt, a nervous pit in his stomach, only to be ushered not into a disciplinary meeting, but into the quiet, sunlit conference room he'd only ever cleaned after hours. Waiting for him were the director, a stern woman he didn't recognize, a state social worker, and sitting with her back to the window, a woman whose poised silence filled the room. Elena Vance didn't offer a hand. She simply said, "Tell me about the stories you tell my granddaughter." Samuel was speechless. The grandmother, the billionaire, the phantom from Lily's past was real, and she knew about the readings. His mind raced. Was this a lawsuit, an accusation? He managed a halting reply. I just read to her. She was lonely." Elena's gaze was analytical, piercing. "Which stories?" she pressed. Samuel listed a few: The Velveteen Rabbit, Where the Wild Things Are, The Chronicles of Narnia. He described the voices, the sound effects. The social worker, Mrs. Gable, took notes, her expression unreadable. Then Elena asked the question that changed everything. "Why, you're not paid for it, you're not her family, what do you get from this?" Samuel looked down at his work-roughened hands. He thought of Clara, he thought of Mia. The truth was simple. "I get to hear her laugh," he said quietly. "My daughter, she's got her whole class, her friends. Lily has four walls. Everyone needs someone to get excited to see them. For the first time, Elena's perfect composure flickered. She glanced at the director. "Leave us, please." When the door closed, the dynamic shifted. Elena stood and walked to the window overlooking the scrappy playground. "I have watched you, Mr. Evans, for weeks through the security feed." Samuel felt a surge of violation, then a deeper confusion. "You've been spying." "I have been assessing," she corrected, turning back. "My relationship with my daughter was catastrophic. I was driven. She was sensitive. We said terrible things. By the time I softened, her addiction had taken hold. Lily was born into that chaos. I offered help, but it was always conditional, always through lawyers. My daughter refused it. Then she was gone." Elena's voice was a dry, brittle thing. "Lily is all I have left, and the state deemed me an unfit potential guardian due to the history of estrangement and, frankly, my perceived lack of personal connection." Samuel began to understand the terrifying scale of the situation. This wasn't just about stories. This was about custody, about a child's future. "What does this have to do with me?" he asked. "Everything," Elena stated. "You have a connection with her, a genuine, documented, consistent bond. The state's own reports show that children with disabilities in foster care are less likely to find permanent homes. Lily is considered a complex placement. Your nightly visits are the most stable emotional interaction in her file." She paused, letting the weight of that settle. "I intend to petition for guardianship. But I am a 70-year-old woman with no recent experience with children, a fraught family history, and more money than could ever be considered relatable. The court will be skeptical. They will look for evidence of a supportive, stable environment. They will look for a community around Lily." Samuel's head was spinning. "You want me to vouch for you?" "I want you," Elena said, her words precise, "to consider a proposition. I am prepared to create a funded trust to support Lily's care, her education, her every need. I want to bring her into my home, but I am not a fool. I know what my wealth looks like. I know what my past suggests. I need someone in her life who is there for her asterisk, not the trust fund. Someone who sees the child, not the inheritance." She walked back to the table and placed a single, embossed card in front of him. It bore the logo of her family's foundation. "I am offering you a salaried position, child life and development specialist. Your sole duty would be to ensure Lily's emotional well-being, to continue your readings, to be her advocate and her friend. You would have an apartment on the property. Your daughter would have a place there too. It would be a fresh start for all of us." The offer hung in the air, monstrous and magnificent. It was everything Samuel needed: financial security, a home, a job that mattered. It was also everything he feared: obligation, dependency, the shadow of immense wealth. "This is because I read her stories," he whispered, incredulous. "No," Elena said, her voice finally softening a fraction. "This is because you listened to her silence, and in a world full of noise, that is a rare currency. I am, effectively, purchasing that currency, but I am also, I hope, preserving it." Samuel left the meeting in a daze. The director stopped him in the hall. Her attitude had transformed from bureaucratic caution to nervous deference. "This could be transformative for Willowbrook, Samuel. A significant donation from the Vance Foundation is being discussed for a new sensory room, for more staff. It's contingent on this arrangement." The message was clear. His decision now carried the weight of the entire home's potential future. He didn't go to work that night. He sat in his small living room, the card burning a hole on the coffee table. He discussed it with Mia, who, at 9 years old, understood only that a rich lady wanted them to live in a big house to help a blind girl. "Will we still be us?" Mia asked, the most profound question of all. Samuel had no answer. The next development was a legal one. Mrs. Gable, the social worker, made an unexpected visit to his apartment for a home study, but for him, not for Elena. The state was now assessing Samuel's suitability as a potential, kinship-like support figure in Lily's potential new living arrangement. The system was bending around Elena's wealth and influence, creating a new category just for this case. Samuel passed, but the scrutiny was intense: his finances, his mental health, his parenting. Meanwhile, Elena began her very public, very private campaign. She didn't issue press releases. Instead, she started visiting Willowbrook, not as a billionaire, but as a grandmother. She sat in on Lily's orientation and mobility lessons. She learned Braille alongside her. She brought simple, tactile books, but she did not read them aloud. She watched Samuel do it. And Lily, initially wary of this new, quiet presence, began to accept her because Samuel was there, a bridge of trust. One afternoon, Elena witnessed a small, devastating moment. A group of visiting children from a local school on a charity trip were in the common room. They saw Lily with her cane and sunglasses. One boy, not meaning to be cruel, asked loudly, "What's wrong with her eyes?" Lily shrank back, her lower lip trembling. Before any staff could react, Samuel, who was washing windows nearby, knelt down. He didn't scold the boy. He said, "Her eyes work differently. She sees with her ears and her hands. Like she can probably tell what you had for lunch by the sound of your voice. Try it." The boy, intrigued, spoke. Lily, hesitant, whispered, "Peanut butter." She was right. The moment transformed from one of othering to one of wonder. Elena, watching from a corner, saw the exact quality money could never buy: compassionate redirection. That evening, she asked Samuel to walk with her in the garden. "The hearing is in 3 weeks," she said. "The judge will review all the evidence, including Mrs. Gable's reports and testimony from the director. Your role is critical. You must testify that you believe this arrangement is in Lily's best interest, that you will be a constant for her." She stopped, her elegant coat seeming out of place among the overgrown rose bushes. "I need to know you will say that." Samuel looked at the setting sun. "Do you believe it's in her best interest, or is this about assuaging your guilt?" Elena absorbed the blunt question without flinching. "Both," she admitted, a shocking honesty, "but the former would be impossible without the latter motivating it. I am trying to build a solution from my flaws. I need your virtues to make it real." It was the most human thing she had ever said to him. Samuel agreed to testify. The weekend before the hearing, Elena invited Samuel and Mia to her estate for a day. It was not the opulent penthouse he imagined, but a sprawling, comfortable country house filled with books, not artwork. The apartment on the property was a charming, separate cottage overlooking a pond. Mia ran ahead, enchanted. Lily was there, brought for the day by a care aide. She heard Mia's laughter and reached out. The two girls, one blind, one sighted, connected through sound and play, sitting under a tree as Mia described the clouds to Lily. Samuel and Elena watched from the terrace. "This could work," Samuel murmured, almost to himself. "It must," Elena replied. Then she did something startling. She removed a simple silver bracelet from her wrist, one she always wore. She pressed it into Samuel's hand. "This was my daughter's when she was Lily's age. I want Lily to have it, but not from me, not yet. Keep it. Give it to her when you feel she understands that love can come from broken places." It was a transfer of trust, profound and terrifying. Samuel closed his fingers around the cool metal. In that moment, he ceased being just an employee, just a witness. He became a keeper of history, a bridge between a wounded past and a fragile future. The morning of the custody hearing dawned gray and cold. Samuel put on his one suit, now feeling like a costume. Mia held his hand tightly. They met Elena at the county family court building. She was flanked by 2 attorneys but looked utterly alone. The social worker, Mrs. Gable, gave Samuel a tight, professional nod. Inside the sterile courtroom, the judge, a weary-looking man with kind eyes, reviewed the file. The proceedings began with dry formalities. Then Elena's attorney outlined the proposal: guardianship to Elena Vance, with a detailed care plan, the establishment of a trust, and the formalized, paid role for Samuel Evans as a dedicated support specialist. The county attorney, representing the state's interest in Lily, rose, and she immediately zeroed in on the one unpredictable element in this meticulously planned arrangement: Samuel. "You are proposing, essentially, to hire a friend for this child," the county attorney said, her tone skeptical. "A man with no formal training in child development, special education, or therapy. His qualification is that he reads stories. The court is being asked to outsource emotional labor in a guardianship, which is highly unorthodox. Mr. Evans, is it true you have significant personal debt?" Samuel felt the eyes of the room on him. "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "And this position would solve that financial pressure, would it not?" "It would." "So," the attorney continued, turning to the judge, "we have a financially vulnerable individual offered life-changing compensation, whose positive testimony is literally bought and paid for by the petitioner. How can the court weigh his opinion as unbiased? This isn't a community bond, it's an employment contract. The elegant structure Elena had built trembled. The judge leaned forward, his expression grave. He looked directly at Samuel. "Mr. Evans, I need to understand your motivation. In your own words, without reference to job titles or salaries, why do you want to be in this child's life?" The courtroom was silent. Elena held her breath. Samuel looked at his hands, then at the judge. He thought of Lily's hand, feeling his heartbeat. He thought of the silver bracelet in his pocket. He thought of the sound of her laugh, a sound that had become his own anchor. He began to speak, and his words would either sink them all or build the bridge they needed to cross. Samuel looked at the judge. "When my wife died," he began, his voice low but clear, "the world got very quiet for me and my daughter. You learn that most kindness is quiet. It doesn't come with a certificate, it's just showing up. Lily's world is quiet by necessity. I showed up, that's all. The job, the salary, that's a consequence, not the cause. If you take all that away, I'd still find a way to read to her, because she needs it. And honestly, Your Honor, so do I." The courtroom was silent. The judge studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly, making a note. The county attorney sat down, her point blunted but not broken. The hearing adjourned for a recess, with a ruling expected by the end of the day. In the hallway, Elena approached Samuel. She didn't thank him. Instead, she said, "You made it human. That was the only thing that could possibly work." But the relief was short-lived. As they exited the courthouse, they were met not by peaceful silence, but by the flash of cameras and a shouted barrage of questions. A local reporter had gotten a tip: "Billionaire granny in bizarre custody buyout involving janitor." The story, stripped of all nuance, went viral by dinner. Headlines screamed, "Paid friend, publishing heiress hires father figure for disabled granddaughter." Social media erupted. One camp vilified Elena, a cold capitalist trying to purchase a family. Another camp vilified Samuel, a gold digger exploiting a blind child. The compassionate center was drowned out by the noise. Memes were made. Samuel's modest social media profiles were flooded with hateful messages and morbid curiosity. This public nightmare triggered a bureaucratic one. The county's head of child services, facing sudden media scrutiny, announced a formal review of the proposed guardianship arrangement, citing ethical concerns over commodified caregiving. The donation to Willowbrook was put on ice. The director called Samuel, her voice strained. "I'm so sorry, the board is getting nervous. The publicity, it's a lot." Worst of all, the leak had come from inside. Mrs. Gable, the social worker, confessed to a supervisor that she'd spoken to a reporter friend off the record, concerned the court was being starstruck by wealth. Her professional assessment was now compromised, and the entire case file was tainted. Samuel and Mia became prisoners in their own apartment. Mia came home from school crying because classmates said her dad was a butler for a rich baby. Samuel's night shifts at Willowbrook became unbearable. Staff looked at him with pity or suspicion. He was told, for Lily's protection, to suspend his visits until the media died down. The one thing that gave the entire endeavor meaning, his connection to Lily, was severed by the very attention the case had attracted. Elena, from her fortress of wealth, was not immune. Shareholders in her flagship publishing company raised reputational concerns. Tabloids dug up old, painful stories about her estranged daughter. She was portrayed as a villain in a fairy tale, the wicked queen trying to steal the child. The pressure mounted in a boardroom meeting where a senior advisor suggested perhaps a quieter, more traditional adoption pathway without the ancillary personnel. That's when Elena Vance showed her steel. She called an emergency press conference outside her foundation's headquarters. Standing alone at a microphone, she delivered a statement that would redefine the battle. "I have been accused of trying to buy love. I have been accused of exploiting a kind man. Let me be clear, you cannot purchase what Samuel Evans provides. You can only be humble enough to recognize its worth and responsible enough to support it. This is not a transaction. It is an acknowledgement that it takes a community to raise any child, and for a child the system has labeled complex. That community must be intentionally built. I am using my resources to build that community. If that is a crime, then I am guilty." Then she dropped the revelation that changed the game. "And to those concerned about influence, I am removing it. I am placing the entirety of the proposed trust fund for Lily's care under the joint stewardship of a third-party non-profit, with Mr. Evans's role enshrined as a right of the child, not a gift from me. His position cannot be altered or removed by me or any board without the approval of a court-appointed guardian ad litem. I am binding my own hands. Because this was never about control, it is about restitution. The legal maneuver was brilliant. It turned the paid friend argument on its head. Samuel wasn't her employee, he was Lily's protected resource, paid from a locked box Alina could no longer touch. The media cycle, starved for a new angle, pivoted. Pieces appeared with titles like The Unbuyable Bond and Can Love Be a Job Description? But the personal damage was done. The night after her press conference, Alina arrived unannounced at Samuel's apartment. She looked exhausted, her usual poise frayed. I underestimated the cruelty of the world, she said, accepting a cup of tea. I have exposed you and your daughter to it. If you wish to withdraw, I will understand. The arrangement will be dissolved, and I will still ensure Lily is provided for. You will be compensated for your time. Samuel looked at Mia's bedroom door, then at the silver bracelet on his dresser. He thought of Lily waiting in a silent room, wondering why the stories had stopped. What does Lily think? He asked. She doesn't know about any of this, Alina said. She only knows you haven't come. She asks for you every night. That was the answer. Then I'm not withdrawing, Samuel said, but we do it differently. No more secrets, no more hidden cameras. Mia and I will meet Lily properly, not as part of a job interview, as people, and you need to be there not as a billionaire, but as her grandmother. She needs to connect us all or this won't work. It was a risk. Forcing a real, unscripted connection could collapse the entire fragile structure, but Alina, out of options and out of pride, agreed. The meeting was arranged at a neutral location, a children's sensory garden. Lily held her aide's hand, her head tilted, listening to the fountain. Samuel approached with Mia. Lily, he said softly, it's Samuel, and this is my daughter Mia. Lily's face lit up. You stopped coming, she said, a simple statement of heartbreak. I'm sorry, Samuel said, his voice thick. Things got complicated, but I'm here now. Mia, without prompting, took Lily's other hand. I like your sunglasses, Mia said. My dad says you see with your ears. What do I sound like? As the two girls began a halting, beautiful conversation, Samuel and Alina watched from a bench. She's afraid of you, Samuel said bluntly. She hears your voice and goes quiet. She knows you're important, but she doesn't know if you're safe. Alina's shoulders slumped. What do I do? For once, Samuel said, don't try to fix it. Just be present, be boring, be the lady who sits there and doesn't demand anything. So Alina did. She sat through the afternoon, not offering gifts, not directing the conversation. She just existed in Lily's space. And slowly, inch by inch, Lily's posture softened toward the direction of her grandmother's voice. A week later, the judge issued his ruling. He granted temporary guardianship to Alina Vance, pending a 6-month review. He formally approved the creation of the independent trust, and he made a specific note in his order. The court finds the proposed supportive role of Samuel Evans to be a reasonable and child-centric accommodation for Lily's unique needs, constituting a modern extension of the kinship care model. It was a landmark phrase. They had won. But the victory felt fragile. They moved into the estate, Samuel and Mia into the cottage, Lily into the main house with Alina and a live-in nurse. The dynamic was awkward, a new family assembled from spare parts. Samuel started his official job, which felt strangely formal compared to the quiet magic of the Willowbrook nights. Alina was trying, but she was a novice at bedtime stories and skinned knees. The first major crisis happened a month in. Lily had a nightmare, screaming in the dark, disoriented. The nurse couldn't calm her. Alina, paralyzed by her own inadequacy, stood outside the room. Samuel, hearing the cries from the cottage, came over. He didn't pick Lily up. He sat on the floor by her bed and began to hum a low, steady tune, the one he'd used for the emerald sound. Lily's screams subsided into hiccups. She reached out, found his arm, and held on. The dragon was in the garden, she whispered. He was lost. Samuel kept humming. Even dragons get lost, he said softly, but they always find their way home by the sound of the ones they love. He guided her small hand to his chest, to the steady beat of his heart, just as he had before. She fell back asleep. Alina, watching from the shadowed hallway, finally understood the transaction. She wasn't purchasing Samuel's kindness for Lily. She was purchasing his kindness for herself, asterisk, the chance to witness it, to learn from it, to finally become someone worthy of it. She wasn't the benefactor, she was the beneficiary. This realization shattered her last wall. The next morning, she asked Samuel to teach her how to read a story. Not just the words, but the voices, the sounds, the spaces in between. She was a terrible student at first, stiff and self-conscious. But she practiced. With Samuel, then alone, then finally, one evening with Lily. Her voice trembled, her sound effects were pathetic, but she finished the book. Lily, at the end, simply said, "Again, Grandma, but do the bare voice deeper." It was the first time Lily had called her Grandma. The 6-month review period was progressing, the public noise had faded, and a delicate new normal was establishing itself. But just as they began to breathe, the past reared its head in the most unexpected way. Samuel received a letter from a law firm representing Lily's paternal grandfather, a man none of them had ever met, who had been absent since his son, Lily's father, had abandoned Lily's mother during the pregnancy. The letter stated that, having become aware of the substantial trust being established for Lily, he was petitioning the court for visitation rights and a re-evaluation of the custodial environment. He wasn't seeking custody, the letter made it clear, he was seeking leverage. It was a shakedown hidden in legal parchment. The message was implicit, make it worth my while to go away. The peace they had fought so hard to build was threatened not by a principled opponent, but by a specter of greed. Elena's money, the very thing that had built Lily's safety net, had now drawn a predator, and Samuel, the man hired to protect Lily's heart, would now have to help protect her future from a shadow she didn't even know existed. The battle for the family was over. The war for its integrity was just beginning. The letter from the paternal grandfather, a man named Carl, was a grenade with the pin already pulled. His argument was coldly legalistic. As a blood relative, he had standing to request visitation and challenge the unorthodox living situation that might affect Lily's moral development. Elena's lawyers were confident they could defeat him in court, but a fight would mean dragging an 8-year-old blind girl through another custody evaluation, more headlines, and reopening the wounds of her parents' tragic history. Samuel, however, saw a different path. "We don't fight him with lawyers," he said to Elena. "We drown him in family." His plan was audacious. He proposed they invite Carl to the estate, not for a negotiation but for a day, let him see Lily's life, let him meet the community around her, let him look the child he was trying to monetize in the eye. Elena was horrified. It's a security risk, it's emotional blackmail. But Samuel was firm. He's betting on us being afraid of a scandal, on us being a shaky, bought-and paid-for illusion, so we show him we're not. We show him we're real. After tense deliberation, Elena agreed. A carefully worded, non-threatening invitation was sent by her lawyer. To everyone's shock, Carl accepted. He arrived on a Saturday afternoon, a man in his late 60s with a worn leather jacket and suspicious eyes. He expected a fortress. He found a home. Lily was in the sensory garden with Mia, their laughter ringing out as Mia described the colors of the wind chimes. Samuel was building a raised herb bed for Lily to touch and smell. Elena was sitting on a bench, reading a Braille book, practicing. Carl watched silent for an hour. He saw Lily navigate the garden paths with confidence, heard her call Samuel by name, felt the unforced ease between the two girls. He saw Elena flub a line of Braille and laugh at herself, asking Lily for help. He saw a family, messy and made, but undeniable. Samuel approached him, no lawyers present, just two grandfathers. "You want to be in her life?" Samuel asked, his voice quiet. "That's what we all want. But you have to ask yourself why. Is it for her, or for what you think you can get from her?" Carl's defensiveness cracked. He looked at his hands. "My son, he was a mess. I wasn't much better. I heard about the money, thought maybe I deserved a piece for all the trouble." Samuel nodded. "I know about wanting a piece of something stable, but look at her. She's not a trust fund. She's a little girl who lost her parents. We're all trying to be what she needs. You can be part of that, but not like this, not with threats." Elena joined them. She didn't offer money. She offered something more valuable, a story. She told Carl about his son, things she'd learned from her daughter in better days, small, human details. She spoke not as a billionaire, but as another grieving elder. "We have a chance to do better for her than we did for them," she said, "but it has to be clean." Carl left that day without a settlement. He left with a standing invitation for supervised visits, contingent on him completing a grandparent support program. He left, ultimately, as a diminished threat. The legal petition was quietly withdrawn a week later. The system had been outmaneuvered not by wealth, but by overwhelming, tangible love. With the last external threat neutralized, the family finally solidified. The 6-month review came and went, resulting in permanent guardianship for Alina. Samuel's role was made permanent within the trust structure, but titles mattered less and less. What mattered were the routines: Friday pizza nights, Saturday story time where Alina and Samuel took turns reading, Sunday walks where Mia described the world to Lily. Alina, the publishing titan, found her greatest project wasn't a bestseller, but a little girl's childhood. She used her resources not for luxury, but for access: the best Braille tutors, music therapists, and eventually, a groundbreaking experimental treatment for her specific type of optic nerve hypoplasia. It didn't restore sight, but it improved light perception. The day Lily turned 9, she looked toward a bright window and said, "Grandma, the sun is a yellow hum." Alina cried. Samuel, in the stability he helped create, flourished. He enrolled in night classes for child psychology, his experience now backed by theory. He started a small podcast, The Sound of Stories, sharing techniques for reading to children with visual impairments. It found a quiet, dedicated audience of parents and caregivers. He never forgot the smell of lemon cleaner, but now it was just one scent among many: grass, old books, Mia's shampoo, Lily's favorite lavender lotion. The final surprise, the one that cemented their legacy, came from Lily herself. For her 10th birthday, Alina wanted to give her something spectacular: a trip, a pony, anything. Lily asked for something else. "I want to make a book," she said, "a book you can hear and feel." Inspired by Samuel's soundscapes and her own world, she wanted to create a story for other blind children. Alina's entire publishing apparatus was quietly mobilized not for profit, but for passion. Sound engineers worked with Lily to record a rich auditory landscape. Texture artists developed pages with embroidered scenes, thermoform raised illustrations, and pockets with scents. Samuel co-wrote the simple, beautiful text about a nightingale who teaches a princess that true sight is in the heart. Mia provided the sighted child perspective, ensuring the descriptions were vivid. The Nightingale's Heart was published under a joint imprint, Lily's Library. All proceeds were directed to a new foundation funding sensory books for children's homes and blind services. The press coverage this time was universally warm, focusing on creation, not conflict. At the launch party held at the estate, Lily stood between Samuel and Alina. A reporter asked her what the book was about. Lily smiled. "It's about finding your family in the dark," she said, "and how they help you hear the colors." Years flowed. Mia grew into a fierce advocate for her sister, studying special education. Lily, with her sharp mind and sharper ears, developed an interest in audio engineering. Samuel and Alina, once bound by a transactional contract, became inseparable partners in the foundation's work and quietly in life. They never married, but they built a shared history deeper than any legal document. The story that began with a hidden camera and a lonely janitor had rewritten itself into a quiet epic of redemption. It proved that family isn't just who you're born to, but who shows up for you. That love, even when it starts as a paid position, can become priceless. And that sometimes, the most profound legacies are built not from headlines and fortunes, but from the simple, consistent sound of a voice in the dark, reading on. The journey of Samuel, Alina, Lily, and Mia stands as a testament to a radical idea: that healing is possible, that broken lines can be mended, and that every child, especially those the system sees last, deserves a story where they are the hero. Theirs is a story that continues, one page, one laugh, one heartbeat at a time. So what does this story teach us? That our world, for all its noise, is starving for quiet connections. That in an economy of attention, the most valuable currency is still consistent, selfless presence. Samuel and Alina's journey reveals a truth we often forget. The most powerful families are not born, they are built, through choice, through effort, and through the courage to answer a silent cry with an unwavering voice. This narrative exists in the quiet spaces of our own communities. It's found in the estimated 3 to 9 million children living in institutions worldwide, many with living parents who simply couldn't cope. It's in the volunteers who show up to read, to hold a hand, to be a steady presence in a system stretched thin. The legacy of this story isn't the billionaire's fortune, it's the proof that healing is a collaborative art. That a janitor's kindness and a grandmother's redemption can weave a safety net strong enough to catch a falling child and, in the process, catch each other. Lily's story continues. Her books, born from darkness, now bring light to others. Samuel's work has evolved from cleaning floors to clearing pathways for understanding. Elena found that her greatest publishing success wasn't on a bestseller list, but in the chapters of a shared life written in forgiveness. And Mia learned that sisterhood isn't defined by blood, but by loyalty. This is more than a feel-good tale, it's a blueprint, a reminder that the next chapter of someone's life might begin the moment you decide to show up without fanfare and simply listen. The cameras are off, the headlines have faded, but the work of building family in all its unconventional, beautiful forms goes on every single day. If this story touched you, we'd love to know. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Tell us which moment stayed with you the most. Was it Samuel's first story, Elena's press conference, or Lily's final line about hearing the colors? If you believe the world needs more narratives like this, stories of healing, hope, and humanity, then hit that subscribe button. We are dedicated to bringing you journeys that mend the heart and challenge the spirit. New stories are on the way, and we would be honored to have you with us for the next one. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and for being part of this community. Remember, your quietest act of kindness might be someone else's loudest hope. Until next time, take care of your heart and never stop believing in second chances.